Hello everyone. Looks like my screen's a little too big for the frame. Let me fix. Nope, that's not the. There we go. Well, is that it? I think that's close enough. Hello. Welcome, Paul, Lobsel, Poprox, Daniel, Liz. I did in fact see the season 2 trailer to the next season of the Donghua for this show, which is like the animated show. If you haven't seen it, there's a season 1 which just recently started getting an English dub and sounds pretty great. But it is exciting time to be a fan of this book. And speaking of, welcome back to Muse Reads, which I haven't done in months because I've been so busy with other projects. I used to read books on the channel, and then I made a secondary channel. That's where they're all at if you want to check those out. I read them here just because this channel is where all the YouTube benefits, all the cool, fancy, fun shit is on this channel. So when this video is done, it'll go to the second channel. Heaven Official's Blessing. We left off on book 2, the flashback to the past when Xie Lian was a prince who then ascended to godhood and is now trying to use his godliness to help the people he left behind. His country is going through some tough times. The moment we left off last time, he found in one of his temples a young boy who he'd met when he was alive. The young boy that fell, and he caught him during the parade. The young boy has been struggling and was in the temple and saying, I don't know what to do with myself. What's going on? My life sucks. What should I do? And Xianle basically says, if you don't have a reason to live, make me your reason. He wasn't supposed to talk to him. He was breaking the rules, but he was trying to give the kids some hope. And that is where we left off at that moment. They are in the temple. His two friends, Fengshen and Mu Qing, are next to him trying to cover his mouth. And the young boy, who, I can't remember what they're calling the young boy, is in the temple kind of freaking out because he's hearing a disembodied voice. All right. Chapter 74. Praying for rain. The rain master lends the rain hat. The young boy was completely and utterly stunned. Meanwhile, Fengshen and Mu Qing both wished they could grow several more arms and legs to smother Xie Lian. With great difficulty, they finally pulled him down. Yet Xie Lian was effortlessly pushed them away and said, "All right, I'm done. I know I violated the rules, but just pretend you heard nothing and all will be fine. As long as you guys don't say anything, no one will know. Just this once. Don't say anything." Mu Qing looked like he'd been forced to eat a sock and shook his head, muttering, "I can't believe you. Saying something like, 'live on for me,' with such confidence. You're really..." Xie Lian didn't think what he said was much of anything, but hearing Mu Qing, it now sounded like it was quite something indeed, and he flushed a bright red color. Fengshen immediately frowned. "Enough. His Highness already said not to speak of it, so why are you still talking about it?" Yet the corners of his lips were twisted. Xie Lian couldn't stand it anymore and defended himself. What? What I said clearly worked. Look!" The young boy sat dazed for a long while, but when no more of Xie Lian's voice came, he rubbed hard at his face, reached for the offering plate, held it in his arms, and started munching at the dried fruits and refreshments. He chewed and chewed vigorously, looking like a small animal, both vicious and pitiful. Xie Lian bent down to watch him, a smile appearing on his face. He said to the other two, "You see, it worked. He refused to eat before, but now he's eating." "All right, fine, it works, because you're a god," Mu Qing said. Right, it works, because you're a god," Fengshen said too. Xie Lian straightened and became serious once more. That's right, I am a god. I called you both over because I've indeed come to a decision. In an instant, the relaxed atmosphere turned heavy again. What do you want us to do? Feng Xin asked, while Mu Qing questioned, Are we still minding this matter? We are. It's simple, Xie Lian said. There's not enough water in the kingdom of Xianle, so we'll go to the kingdoms outside Xianle. Go to the other kingdoms? Mu Qing asked, hesitant. Wouldn't that be too far? We'd need to borrow water-creating spiritual devices from some water god and impose ourselves in the territories of other heavenly officials. They might not be willing. Of course, Xie Lian had considered this. I'm going to give it a shot. It's still better than doing nothing. You two stay and continue to watch over Yong'an. Assist the worst affected areas, and I will return to the heavenly court. Any problems? No problems. I've got your back, Feng Xin said. Mu Qing gave it some thought and questioned, Then what about all the prayers from the devotees at the temple of the Crown Prince, Your Highness? I was going to get to that, Xie Lian replied. Pick out the important ones and take care of them for me. The not-so-dire ones can wait. Mu Qing didn't look too optimistic, but still acknowledged him. You're the Crown Prince. We'll listen to you, but I'd advise not to let them wait too long. Nope, did I not click over here? Click back on my book. There we go. Xie Lian patted their shoulders. Feng Xin and Mu Qing bowed, then departed, leaving only Xie Lian and the child in the small shrine. Xie Lian exited the shrine and took a glance back, but didn't stay another moment longer, rushing straight for the heavenly court. Initially, he was going to pay a visit to the few heavenly officials that controlled water, but strangely, a number of them was away from the court, and only the Rain Master, who didn't reside in the heavens, was around. Xie Lian was hurrying down the streets of the court and bumped into a black-clad woman with a number of scrolls in her arms. Your Highness, you're finally back, she smiled. Xie Lian immediately asked, Nangong, you've come in the nick of time. Do you know where the Rain Master's residence is located? The black-clad woman was named Nangong Jie and was a low-ranking civil official from the middle court. After Xie Lian had descended, much of the grunt work and errands were taken care of by her. This individual was well informed of news and handled affairs well, so Xie Lian thought well of her. The Lord Rainmaster's new palace hasn't finished construction yet, so the current residence is temporarily situated in the kingdom of Yushi in the south, Nengong Jie said. She gave him the address to the Rainmaster's residence, then added, Why are you looking for the Lord Rainmaster? For urgent business. Thanks for your help, Xie Lian said. He was about to leave, but turned back and cleared his throat, suddenly embarrassed. Nangong, you're more familiar with the heavenly officials of the upper court. Can you tell me if the Rainmaster likes anything? Usually, when a newly appointed heavenly official ascended, the clever ones would pay a visit to all the palaces of every official and greet them with gifts as a form of social salutation. This was pretty much an unspoken rule, but Xie Lian ascended too suddenly, and when he first arrived, no one taught him. It was only afterwards that Guoshi reminded him, but by then it was too late, and it would have been awkward. Also, it felt too much like backhanded bribery, and as a crown prince, Xie Lian didn't appreciate the practice. In the end, he decided to go about things naturally, hoping for a chance to build relationships with other officials through more genuine means. It was an admirable act, but now he'd turned back on it and proactively was asking what a heavenly official would like, sounding quite obviously like he was about to bribe someone, so he couldn't help but blush with shame. But he had no other choice. The other gods who resided at the heavenly court communicated through the spiritual communication array, and that would have made negotiation much easier. The Rainmaster was involved in none of these interactions, so for a first visit, Xie Lian didn't want people to misunderstand that he'd be borrowing spiritual devices for nothing. Nengong Jie immediately understood. Regrettably, I'm afraid I can't help your highness in this. The Lord Rainmaster is low-key. Not just me, there's probably no one in the entire heavenly realm who knows this lord's personal interests. Sorry. Xie Lian reddened. No worries, don't take it to heart. Thanks. Nengong Jie added, But if my lord has anything the matter, it won't hurt to pay a visit directly. By the Lord Rainmaster's temper, you might still very well be received." Xie Lian thanked her again and followed her direction, going southward, arriving at the temporary residence of the Rainmaster. It was a small village, the mountains green and the waters clear, a land of picturesque scenery, but Xie Lian had no mind to appreciate it. He crossed the fields and finally saw a stone slate with the word rain engraved on it. Engraved on it? What? This meant that after passing the stone slate, it would be the temporary domain of the Rainmaster, and those working within it should all be the Rainmaster's subordinates. But as Xie Lian walked, it was only lush green fields all around. In the fields there were oxen mooing, mills turning, assiduous farmers planting rice, and next to the fields was a small, crooked, thatched cottage. There was neither trace nor signs of divinity, and Xie Lian wondered if he'd gone in the wrong direction. Wasn't this an impoverished little farming village? While he was doubting himself, a black ox from a field farther away suddenly mooed twice. It stood back on its hind legs. The forelegs stretched, and it helped itself remove the plow from its own back. That strong and solid body narrowed. The long oxen snout shrank, and within the blink of an eye it had transformed into a bare-backed farmer from a buff black ox. The farmer was tall and strong, his muscles well-defined, his expression stubborn. His nose had a steel nose ring hooked through it like that of an ox, and a long weed hung from his lips. The other farmers witnessed this extraordinary transformation, but continued to work like it was nothing. Thus, Xie Lian concluded that no one here was mortal, and approached, raising his hands and folding them into a polite fist. "Fellow cultivator, may I inquire if this is the temporary residence of the Lord Rainmaster?" The black ox farmer pointed to the field bank across and replied, "Yeah, the Lord Rainmaster lives there." Xie Lian looked around several times before confirming that in the pointed direction there was indeed only a thatched cottage that looked like it would topple from a mere breeze, and it for sure leaked on a rainy day. Even his most shabby, decrepit shrines looked more solid than the little cottage. Xie Lian was full of wonder. They said the Lord Rainmaster was of royal descent, like himself, from the kingdom of Yushi. It was for this very reason that he didn't bring any precious gems or rare treasures as a greeting gift, thinking perhaps that the Rainmaster felt the same way he did in regard to those things, which was disdain. Why such destitution after ascension? Maybe it was another form of cultivation. Without forgetting his manners, Xie Lian thanked the farmer and approached the cottage, calling with a loud and clear voice. "Lord Rainmaster, please forgive this Prince of Xianle for making this abrupt visit without prior notice." There was no response from within the cottage, and the farmer came forward, hauling the plow. "Oh, you're that crown prince who ascended at the age of 17? "Regrettably," Xie Lian said. "It's nothing regrettable, it's the truth," the farmer said. "But the Lord Rainmaster doesn't like meeting people and was injured recently, so I'm afraid you won't be received today." Hearing this, Xie Lian felt disappointed, but still wanted to keep trying. "Then may I ask you to pass on a message for me? I have an urgent request. However, if the Lord Rainmaster should feel inconvenienced by it, I won't push." The farmer chuckled. "Who the heck are you? Go away." "Silence, phone." "No need to pass on word. We all know why you're here. Feels bad, right, having no water in Xianle?" Xie Lian was taken aback. "You know about the affairs of Xianle?" "Of course I know," the farmer said. "It's not just us here in this shoddy mountain ravine. At present, who doesn't know the catastrophe about to fall your kingdom of Xianle? You don't know anything about your own affairs, but everyone else watching closely understands what's going on better than yourself, and they're probably all enjoying this show. You're here to borrow the Rainmaster's spiritual device for disaster aid, right?" Those were enlightening words. It was only then that Xie Lian realized it wasn't that those heavenly officials in the upper court were all gone at the same time. They'd all known what his intentions were and purposefully shut their doors or left a long time ago to avoid him, not wanting to get pulled into his mess. He sighed, thinking, Should I really have paid everyone's palaces a visit at the beginning, so it would be easier to find cooperation now? It was a depressing thought. He responded in a small voice. That's right. If it's inconvenient for the Rainmaster, I won't be bothersome. However, the farmer said, Why not be bothersome? Because it's shameful. This relates to the survival of your kingdom. Shouldn't you cause trouble and annoy us to death? Is it so hard to lower yourself a little? Young people shouldn't be so easily unnerved. Let me say something unpleasant. Should the Lord Rainmaster help, it's on account of kindness. If not, it's on account of duty. Lending the device to you would be based on mood. You can't complain afterwards either. Xie Lian knew what he said made sense, but with such a dire situation at hand and his unfriendly tone, a wave of anger rolled up and he held his head higher, sounding grave. I understand everything you're saying, and I would never complain behind anyone's back, so why must you predetermine how I am? I said I won't be bothersome simply because I don't want to do anything pointless and cause trouble for Lord Rainmaster. But if the Lord Rainmaster doesn't feel inconvenienced and I can borrow the device so long as I am bothersome, then it'd be nothing for me to offer up all 8,000 of my temples and kowtow 100 times. The farmer laughed out loud. Angry? The temper of a child. Here. He tossed something. Xie Lian raised his hand and caught a verdant bamboo hat, the very one the farmer had had on his back. What's this? Xie Lian said. That thing you wanted to borrow, the farmer said. The Lord Rainmaster already asked me to pass it on to you before you came. Use it carefully. If you break it, we won't forgive you. Xie Lian's eyes widened. Why? Didn't I already tell you, the farmer said. Lending it to you is based on mood. Other heavenly officials won't help you, so the Lord Rainmaster had to. Whatever the Lord Rainmaster wants to do, it shall be done. Thank you so much, thank you! Xie Lian cried. That was in all capitals. All right, I gotta get a little more water. I will be right back. The farmer added, Don't be too happy so soon, your highness. The Lord Rainmaster may have ascended before you, but there aren't as many devotees. Therefore, the Lord Rainmaster is not as powerful as you. In addition, there are recent injuries to consider. Other than lending you that, the rest is up to you. Distant waters cannot quench nearby thirst. The Rainmaster hat can move rain, but cannot create water. There's not enough water in your Xianle, so you must borrow from other kingdoms, and they may not be willing. Only the kingdom of Yushi has had an abundant collection over the years and is rather wealthy in that respect. Xie Lian was more than aware of just how difficult it was to lend your own spiritual device to a stranger. He bowed deeply to the thatched cottage. That the Lord Rainmaster would lend a helping hand, I am profoundly grateful. I will not forget this kindness. Should there be anything I can do to help in the future, pray the Lord Rainmaster does not hesitate to ask for me. Farewell. With the spiritual device in hand, Xie Lian immediately found a lake in the south and ladled a large quantity of lake water with the hat. He crossed thousands of miles and returned to Yong'an in Xianle. He found the worst affected village, the Bay of Lang'er, and flipped the bamboo hat from the clouds. Soon after, a small bout of rain fell from the sky. Xie Lian jumped off the clouds, landing both feet on the ground. The half-dead villagers could not believe their eyes. Some rushed out of their doors to cheer under the rain, and some hurriedly brought out buckets of all different sizes to collect the water. Seeing this, Xie Lian breathed a sigh of relief, and finally revealed a smile. Just then he heard a voice call out from afar, "Your Highness!" He turned his head and saw Mu Qing appear from behind a tree, his face dark. Seeing his gloomy expression, Xie Lian knew something was wrong. What is it? Did something happen? Dun dun dun! Chapter 75. Closing the Capital Gates. Survival of Yong'an, Bard. Your Highness, what took you so many days? Mu Qing asked. Xie Lian was taken aback. Did I leave for very long? traveling all over, through the heavens and the earth, scooping lake water, mounting clouds, and making rain, all without care for day or night. Xie Lian hadn't realized how much time had passed. "It's been several days," Mu Qing said. "The prayers from all the devotees at the temple of the Crown Prince have piled up into a mountain." Just then, Xie Lian felt the rain fading and extended a hand. "Didn't I tell you both to take care of the important ones first?" "The ones we can take care of have been sorted," Mu Qing replied. "But there are too many prayers we haven't the right to take over. That's why I asked your highness not to let them wait too long and hurry back." When he finished, the rain stopped at the same time. This bout of rain had lasted much shorter than Xie Lian had expected, and he felt his heart sinking. As the clouds dispersed, the verdant bamboo hat fluttered down, and Xie Lian caught it with both hands. "But do you see this situation? I can't get away either." Mu Qing frowned. "Your Highness, you were able to borrow the Rainmaster's spiritual device? Where did the water come from?" "The kingdom of Yushi from the south," Xie Lian replied. "That far," Mu Qing said. "How much power does that sap from you for moving water just once? And if every bout of rain is this small in size and quantity, if you keep this up, how will you manage to answer your followers' prayers?" Even without him saying it out loud, Xie Lian knew. He was a martial god, and the devotees to the temple of the Crown Prince were his foundation, the source of his spiritual powers. What he was doing was no different than abandoning his base, and if he wasn't careful, both sides would suffer. But what else could be done other than what he was doing right now? "I know," Xie Lian said. "But if things go on like this and a riot breaks out in Yong'an, the temple of the Crown Prince would also be affected sooner or later." "It's already breaking out," Mu Qing said. Xie Lian was shocked. "What?" After hearing Mu Qing's report, Xie Lian rushed back to the royal capital of Xianle. Just as he arrived at the martial deity avenue, there happened to be a band of royal guards, decked in full armor, sharp weapons in hand, walking over with a group of detained, unkempt men with shackles on their hands and around their necks. Citizens crowded on both sides of the road, each face full of rage. Face and rage put together. Thank you, dyslexia. Feng Xin gripped his black bow, tense and ready, as if prepared for any sudden riots. Xie Lian cried, "Feng Xin, who are these detainees? What crime did they commit? Where are they taking them?" Hearing his voice, Feng Xin stomped over. "Your Highness, they're people of Yong'an." Now, just to cover this again, since it's been a while, you may not remember, Yong'an is one country or one city. It's the section that's suffering... It's the section that's suffering the drought the worst. And the capital city is still kind of doing okay. So people from that area have been coming to the capital looking for help, for water, and the capital's starting to turn on them and arrest them for it. There were over 10 men, all tall and gaunt, their skin slightly dark. Behind the soldiers trailed a few old men and a number of anxious women and children. "The ones following behind are too?" Xie Lian questioned. "They all are," Mu Qing replied. Turns out, in the past several months, at the height of the drought in Yong'an, many of the residents uprooted and escaped to the east in waves. When it was only some tens of people, it wasn't obvious, but the flow was endless. By now, there was more than 500 people. When 500 people gathered, it became quite the sight. Those people of Yong'an were strangers to the land, had nothing to their names, and the moment they opened their mouths, their dialects gave them away. So when they arrived at a strange, bustling city, naturally they all stuck together for warmth. They looked all over the royal capital and finally found an uninhabited green field. Overjoyed, they built sheds and huts as temporary shelters. Unfortunately, although the green field was uninhabited, to those of the royal capital it was a field of leisure. The people of Xianle had an indulgent culture, and those of the royal capital were leaders in that lifestyle. When free, many would take walks, dance, practice the art of the sword, sing poetry, paint, and gather at the green field. As for Yong'an, sitting at the west of Xianle, they suffered an impoverished land and had always been poor, so the temper and culture of the citizens was completely opposite that of the royal capital. Thus, those of the capital often believed themselves the purer of Xianle blood. And now, with their land of elegance overtaken by a large number of refugees, cooking herbs, crying, doing laundry, starting fires, the stench of leftovers and sweat filling the air, it made many nearby residents recoil with disgust, their complaints abundant. Some of the Yong'ang elderly leaders understood the situation in their hearts, too, and had wanted to move elsewhere. Yet the royal capital was already heavily populated. No matter where they went, it was full of people, and there wasn't anywhere else that could settle so many. Never mind all the wounded, sick, old, and children. It wasn't easy to move, so they boldly and carefully clung on to that field. As much as the people of the royal capital were displeased, they were all still citizens of the same country. In light of the ongoing disaster, they tolerated the stranger's presence. Xie Lian listened to the report to this point when the band of soldiers brought the Yong'ang men to the mouth of the marketplace, shouting, "Kneel." Each of the men looked angry and incredulous, but with sabers bared at their throats, they had no choice but to kneel. After the onlooking crowd of the royal capital saw the men kneel in unison, some sighed, some were relieved. "According to your report, both sides have tolerated each other. What's going on today?" Xie Lian asked. Before Feng Xin and Mu Qing could answer, a woman started screeching from the crowd. "You barbaric thieves! Never mind your sticky fingers. Beating my husband like this, he can't even get up anymore. If anything happens to him, I'll have you pay." Next to her, a number of... Shh! Shh! All right, I think she's done barking. Somebody rang the doorbell. How could they? Next to her, a number of people were trying to comfort her, and some pointed fingers in reproach. "Don't you know to mind yourselves when you're in other people's territory? Yeah, you're a guest in our home, and you crudely steal." One of the young men in shackles finally couldn't take it anymore and argued back. "We already said it wasn't us who stole. We didn't throw the first punch either. Besides, we've got wounded on our side, too." An elder shouted, "Stop talking." The young man shut his mouth angrily. Feng Xin explained, "A dog went missing in the royal capital, and because there was a case where a child of Yong'ang stole and ate someone's duck from hunger, there were assumptions the dog was stolen and eaten by Yong'ang, too." A mob went to interrogate and soon started a brawl. Xie Lian was incredulous. Okay, we're back. Had grocery delivery. Okay, we were explaining why they were all fighting. Here we go. Feng Xin explained, "A dog went missing in the royal capital, and because there was a case where a child of Yong'ang stole and ate someone's duck from hunger, there were assumptions the dog was stolen and eaten too. A mob went to interrogate them and soon started a brawl." Xie Lian was incredulous. "A riot over a dog? And they detained that many people?" "Yes, over a dog," Feng Xin said. "It's gotten this big because both sides have been putting up with each other for too long, and anything small becomes big. Both sides swore the other started it first, and that it's the other's fault. and this mess of a fight somehow grew bigger and bigger. One of the leading soldiers proclaimed, "Violent assemblies shall be severely punished. You are all shackled for public demonstration, and any further crimes are forbidden." He stood down after, and the next second many started chuckling and chucking. They're just in the crowd going, no. Many started chucking and throwing lettuce and rotten eggs at the men of Yong'ang. The old men that trailed behind started bowing to the crowd all over, crying out, "We apologize, everyone, we apologize, please have mercy." Xie Lian thought this whole thing was making a mountain out of a molehill, utterly ridiculous, but he could also somewhat understand. In the end, did they steal? Did they find the dog? Feng Xin shook his head. Who knows? Who can find anything if the bones were cleaned out and thrown away? But judging by their faces, I don't think they stole it. However, verdicts from the soldiers of the royal capital were naturally partial to the royal capital citizens. Stolen or not, there was a brawl, so the fault must lie with those from Yong'ang, especially since the men of the royal capital loved to play around but weren't as tough as the men of Yong'ang. The brawl must have ended in shame, creating more awkwardness. Xie Lian shook his head, gave the crowd a sweeping look, and suddenly noticed that in the row of young men, there was a young man in the middle with his head drooped, whose face looked familiar. It was that young man from the woods, Lang Ying. Xie Lian was stunned. Just then, someone nearby complained, "How come I feel there have been more and more from Yong'ang and the royal capital in the recent months, and now they dare pick fights? No way, are they all coming over?" Another merchant gestured his hands wildly. "His Majesty the King won't allow it. My house was robbed by Yong'ang thieves just the other day. If they all came over, there'd be hell." Hearing this, Lang Ying, who had kept his head low, letting all the groceries be freely thrown at him, suddenly looked up. "Did you see it?" The merchant hadn't expected to be spoken to and responded without thinking. "What?" "Yong'ang thieves robbing your house. Did you see them with your own eyes?" "I didn't see with my own eyes, but it's always been peaceful before, and only after all you arrived was I robbed, so how does it have nothing to do with you?" the merchant argued. Lang Ying nodded. "I see, I understand. Before we came, you were the ones that were stealing, and after we arrived, we became the thieves." Before he finished, a rotten persimmon came flying at him and smashed against the side of his lips, making him look as if he'd vomited a large, bloody blossom. The merchant burst out laughing, and Lang Ying's eyes dimmed. He closed his mouth and stopped talking. Xie Lian softened the sharp rocks being thrown at the young men, ensuring they wouldn't be severely injured. The public humiliation continued until evening, and only when the onlooking citizens gradually dispersed did the soldiers feel it was enough. Only then did they unlock the shackles, warning them never to cause more trouble, otherwise they'd be severely punished, etc., etc. The elders bowed deeply, repeatedly, with apologetic smiles, promising to never violate more rules. However, Lang Ying, lifeless, walked away by himself. Xie Lian watched his lone figure, caught the right moment, and appeared in a flash from behind a tree, blocking his path. The minute he appeared, the young man's eyes sharpened, and in that instant it was as if he was going to choke Xie Lian dead. A flash of a second later, after having seen clearly who it was before him, he tucked away the hand that was ready to attack. "It's you." Xie Lian had transformed back into the form of a young cultivator. He was startled by Lang Ying, whose hand had almost attacked him. He thought to himself, "This man is strong." He spoke up. "I gave you the pearl, so why didn't you take it back to Yong'ang?" Lang Ying gazed at him. "My son is here. I'm here too." After a pause, he took out the coral pearl from his belt. "Did you want it back? Here." If you don't remember what's going on here, when he first found out about the drought, he met a young man in the woods with his infant on his back who had been traveling to the capital to try and get help because of what was happening. And that's how Xie Lian first found out about it. Unfortunately, the infant did not survive. And the man, Lang Ying, didn't go back home because what was the point? The extended hand that held the pearl still held marks of the shackles. After some silence, Xie Lian didn't take it. "Go back. The Bay of Lang'er rained today," he pointed to the sky. "Tomorrow there will be rain again, I promise. It's for certain." But Lang Ying shook his head. "It doesn't matter if it rains or not. There's no going back. Watching his back as he walked away, Xie Lian was left dumbfounded and only felt endless frustration. Before he ascended, it was like he'd not had a cloud of worry. Whatever he wanted to do, it would be done. Who knew that after ascension, all of a sudden, he would be surrounded by incessant worries, both the worries of others and his own. Had it always been this hard to get something done? He'd never felt so lacking, so powerless. Xie Lian sighed and turned to leave, too. There was a mountain of prayers waiting to be answered at the temple of the Crown Prince. Yet he wasn't the one with the most frustration. It was the king. The worry of King Xianle had become reality. The 500-some refugees of Yong'an were only the beginning. With the borrowed Rainmaster hat in hand, Xie Lian ran back and forth between the north and south unceasingly, creating rain by his own power. Yet every bout of rain would use an immense amount of spiritual power, and 5 to 6 days' worth of time. If it wasn't him, there might not be another who could keep it up. Of course, with the exception of Jun Wu, the Heavenly Martial Emperor. But the Heavenly Martial Emperor ruled over a greater land than he, and the number of devotees and domains to care for were significantly more than Xianle. So how could Xie Lian possibly ask Jun Wu for help and distract him? On top of that, each bout of rain could only wet a small area of Yong'an, lasting only a short while. Even if there was some relief, it couldn't fix the root of the problem. After a month, the people of Yong'an officially started to migrate to the east in droves. At first, it was only a band of 10-something people. Now it was hundreds, thousands, massive hordes that flocked together, streaming like a river. After another month, the king of Xianle announced a new decree. Due to the endless disputes and incessant conflicts of recent months, for the sake of peace within the royal capital, as of that day, all Yong'an refugees must leave the city. Everyone would be given a set amount of travel expenses to help settle elsewhere. Before the massive, teeming horde of migrating Yong'an refugees, the grand gates to the royal capital of Xianle closed. Doesn't sound like things are going so well. It's gonna get real rough coming up. The next chapter starts the sad decline to the end of book 2. Thank you for joining me. This will be moved to the second channel. If you don't already subscribe to that channel, link will be in the description. Well, I guess if I'm already moving, link will be on the Discord. Thanks for listening, and go check out the Donghua animated show if you haven't. It's very fun. We'll have to watch it at some point. Join the Discord, follow me on social media, support the channel if you like what I do, and we'll do more book readings soon. Probably next Monday, given the holiday. We'll get back to it then. So, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.